And I think there was a real sense of, starting veterinary medicine and going into practice and thinking, okay, this is what's expected of me. This is what I have to do. Otherwise, I'm not a complete vet. And you think, well, I have to say, I have to be an employee for the rest of my life working at a clinic, or I'm expected to start a clinic with loads of staff and things like that. But, you don't have to. And there are so many other ways to be who you want to be in the veterinary profession, because you're still a vet and you're still doing really important work.
Hi, guys, and welcome to the House Call Vet Cafe podcast. I'm Dr. Eve Harrison. I'm a full-time integrative concierge house call veterinarian in Los Angeles, and I help other vets to build their unique mobile practices on their terms. This podcast is for and by house call and mobile veterinarians, so it is meant to give our community a platform to connect, to share our stories, to lift each other up, and to support each other. Most of us work solo as lone wolves, right? So for me, it's been really powerful to be able to physically hear the voices of my colleagues from all over the world and to get a chance to feel that we truly are part of a community of very real other human beings who get it. While you may be alone in that little bubble of your own vehicle when you're on the road seeing patients, I welcome you to join our community by tuning into our own podcast when you're on your way to your next house call. Whether you're a super experienced house call vet with 30 years of experience, you're a brand new prospective house call vet just looking to get started, or you're house call curious, there will be something for you in this podcast. Each episode, you will hear interviews from other mobile veterinarians just like yourself who are doing unique and innovative things, vets who are sharing their stories, their struggles and challenges, and you can also look forward to hearing valuable information and perspectives from specialists and experts outside of our micro niche. And finally, if becoming a house call veterinarian is something that you've been thinking about exploring, or you're looking for some extra support getting your own mobile practice to feel more profitable and sustainable for you, check out the information in the show notes about my course and our above and beyond supportive private community for members only, plus our monthly group coaching sessions within the House Call Vet Academy. You can also check out my free public Facebook group, which is also called the House Call Vet Cafe, the same name as this podcast, and which is a warm and cozy community for mobile vets to support each other in professional and personal development, in creative entrepreneurship, and in friendship. So thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let's dive into the episode.
Hi, everyone. Today we have a really cool guest who is from the Netherlands. We've never had a guest from the Netherlands before on the show, so I am particularly excited about this. So today we have with us Dr. Marianna Judd, who is originally from the UK and grew up in Chesterfield in the north of England before moving to the Netherlands in 1998. She studied veterinary medicine at Utrecht University and worked for 14 years as a veterinarian in practice before starting Zen Pets in February 2021. She works as a house call vet specializing in acupuncture and other aspects of Chinese medicine, which are her absolute passion, although she does also offer vaccinations, titer checks, and end-of-life care. Dr. Marianna lives in Roosendaal in the south of the Netherlands with her husband, son, and their pets. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me, Eve.
You're welcome. So I know you mentioned it's 8 p.m. where you are now, and it's, I guess 8:18 p.m. It's 11 a.m. here when we're recording. So it's always really fun to have people who are in different time zones. And it's like, you're on a different planet. This is cool.
I know. It's so funny, isn't it? You're just waking up to things and I'm winding down for the day.
Exactly. And has everyone heard this beautiful accent? You guys all know by now, I love accents. So yeah, we're going to hear more of that. That's amazing.
Mm.
So first of all, I wanted to start out the episode by asking, what is your favorite snack to eat in the car when you're on the way to your appointments?
Oh, what a good question. Well, I try to be healthy when I'm in the car. So I will sometimes try to eat some fruit, which my husband is going to laugh at when he hears this because he's always telling me to eat more fruit. Fruit or nuts or something healthy. But you didn't ask that. You asked my favorite snack, and my favorite snack is Pringles. I'm just going to be completely honest, which I know is completely unhealthy, but they're so handy to eat in the car. And so I'm going to have to go with that, which completely goes against my principles with healthy eating and Chinese medicine. But I'm only human.
You are only human. And God knows this shit I eat in my car.
I'm in good company.
Integrative holistic vets eating bad things in the car. That's our MO around here.
Yeah, I think so. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's reassuring.
Definitely not. And I didn't even realize they had Pringles in the Netherlands. Like you never know
Oh,
like what products and what foods and things like that.
I think a lot of things are universal. There's more and more, I think, now that you have a lot of snacks from other countries and things. And we have a lot of American stuff here as well. But yeah, Pringles are pretty universal, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great car snack. They don't roll around so much. It's handy.
Do you have it like where every once in a while I'll have like a round tube of something and it's like rolling around in the car? Do you have it like on
Oh,
the
yes, definitely. And then my husband will find it. He said, "Oh, you've been snacking on Pringles again." I'll be like, "Yeah, sorry." But yes, I think my car needs to be mucked out quite soon. So yeah, it's I'm not very good at keeping it very clean. So I basically live in there. So yeah, it's not that tidy.
Dude, that's the same for me. I actually bought a little tiny vacuum cleaner to keep in my
Oh,
car in hopes of like cleaning, like particularly
yeah,
crumbs, like
yeah.
foods and things that
I
shouldn't
need to
have.
get one of those. I definitely need to get one of those and just keep it in my car. I think at all times. Yeah, it's a bit of a mess in there.
Yeah. I mean, the thing, my guilty admission right now is that I've literally never used the vacuum that I bought. Not which that
I
I've
was going to
never
say you bought it, but have you actually used it?
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
No. So, the step one is there. You just need to put it into action. That's all. It'll be fine.
Exactly. Well, I don't know. Maybe we can be accountability buddies. Like after this
Yeah.
recording, we'll both go
I
and
know.
vacuum out our cars.
I know. Maybe we should text each other sometimes. Like, have you cleaned your car this week? And I'll be like, no, I'm going to do it now. So maybe it could be a good thing. Could be a good thing. You can feel a relationship coming on here.
Oh my gosh, I'm down for it. I'm absolutely down for it. So can you tell me a little bit about how you became a house call vet and what your journey was like? So were you practicing in the UK first and then came over, or have you been only a vet practicing in the Netherlands?
I had only been a vet practicing in the Netherlands. Yeah, I had moved here when I was 18 and I ended up studying veterinary medicine here at university. And then I graduated and I went into practice. And I guess you would call it general practice, but there's not so much of a distinction between general practice and emergency medicine, I would say, in the Netherlands. I think it's getting to a stage where it's more like that. But in general, basically, you just get everything that's thrown at you. So, which probably was one of my factors in moving away from that long term, because it was really quite hard. Very long days, not knowing what's going to come in and having to deal with a lot of emergencies, which was never really my thing. It was never really my forte. I always said I was more like a general practitioner in vet terms. I wasn't really into emergency stuff or emergency operations and things like that. And I found that quite difficult to deal with.
Mhm.
And very long days. I mean, especially the last clinic I worked at, which was a great clinic. But I mean, opening hours, 8 a.m. until 8 p.m.
Oh.
That's pretty tough.
Mhm.
And, I have a child. So, I didn't get to see him an awful lot because, I mean, when I say 8 p.m., we were never finished 8 p.m.
Right.
It was like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And not just that clinic, really. I mean, all other clinics really I've worked at have been like that. That's just how it is. I think things are changing a little bit now. I think there are some clinics, especially for on-call, because that's also something I did on top of it. Was really doing on-call nights, evenings, weekends, not super often, but often enough for it to be a real negative influence, I think, on my work-life balance, which is so
Yeah.
important. And I think more and more now, a lot of clinics are moving towards transferring, especially their nights, onto major clinics who are taking that work on. So it's getting that way. But obviously, that's causing problems in itself for some pet owners, I think, as well. But that's a whole other story. So yeah, it was. I found it quite difficult, really, to juggle all that, and also sort of feeling, I don't know, quite a lot of stress through it all and wondering, is this how it's always going to be? And, I think there's a sense of maybe when you start out as a vet, you're like, okay, so I'm going to be employed somewhere and this is how it's going to be. And maybe you end up owning your own practice, but that was never an ambition of mine at all.
Me neither.
And look what happened.
Yeah. Look at us now.
Yeah. But yeah, there was a bit of a sense of that, like thinking, well, is this it? And I always had the sense that I wasn't really enjoying it as much as I should, and never really feeling that I really found my niche, what I was really into. So yeah, that was really one aspect of it. And the second aspect was really discovering acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And that was something that I was interested in for a really long time. I remember when I was at vet school, I did an elective on alternative medicine, and that covered acupuncture. And it was in like a week that we studied it. I really touched on it a little bit, but it piqued my interest so much that I thought this is something I really want to explore. Didn't do anything with it for years after that. Graduated, got into practice. But I always was at the back of my mind, like, oh, it really interests me. And I was, thinking it might be something really cool to pursue. And I basically talked about it for so much that my husband said, come on, just go for it, at least study it. It's never wrong to do something you enjoy. And I thought, well, yeah, okay, he's right. So I signed up for a course through IVAS, and it was just amazing. It was like a warm bath. Also, my colleagues there, it was just a certain type of person who I thought, oh, I found my people.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. It just made so much sense to me, and it was just so interesting. And I thought, wow, I found my niche. That's what it really felt like. So I started incorporating it into practice quite early on, just, our teachers were like, well, just do it. And I was like, well, I don't really know how to do it, but it's okay. But the results that you get straight away, I was just, mind blowing. It was just amazing. And, I was increasingly trying to use that more and more. And there comes a point when it's also a little bit frustrating because you're doing Western medicine from one side and a little bit of acupuncture from the other. Sometimes it's difficult. I mean, to use both at the same time, absolutely well, but I find it quite difficult sometimes, putting medication into a dog when I was thinking, well, actually, there are other ways that we could help this animal. That started to become a little bit difficult for me. And I was enjoying it so much, the acupuncture, and I was enjoying regular practice just really less and less. And that was just how it went. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, well, what am I going to do here? So I really wanted to pursue the acupuncture. And I just thought, well, you know what? You only live once, and I really need to enjoy my work. And I thought, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to go solo, offer the acupuncture, Chinese medicine, do some vaccinations and some titer checks on the side as well, because especially titer checks really complement the acupuncture really well. And I thought, I'm just going to do it. And I'm not really very brave in taking the plunge for that kind of thing. But I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. And I have never looked back. Best decision of my life.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. It was just, I haven't regretted it at all. It's just been really great. It's just been really great. And the house call bit, it really originated from just thinking, okay, well, I mean, I don't have a practice to work from. I don't have any space at home to set up an office or anything like that. It's going to cost money to rent some office space. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to drive around to people's houses and just do it there. And it's just been really great because people love it. I think the number one thing I hear from people when I come to their houses is, oh, I'm so glad you come to our house. They really like it. And I have to say, it gives you such an advantage, especially when you're treating animals with complex issues sometimes, especially things where emotional issues might be at play. I think it's so important to see them in their home environment because you can get so much information from what's going on with an animal, with regards to the family, with regards to the way they're living. So I think it really gives me an advantage there. And I can really take my time, which I absolutely love. That was one of the things I found difficult sometimes in regular practice was having an appointment, having to fix an animal in 10 to 15 minutes, which, I mean, you just can't. And especially if you've got an acupuncture issue or, chronic health issues, let's put it like that, because that's the thing I see most I use acupuncture for. You just really take your time. You can sit down with an owner. Sometimes they're quite nervous when you come to their house and they're not really sure what to expect. Because, acupuncture, people know about it for people, but not for animals, a lot of them. And they're like, well, what the heck is going to happen here? And I really think you put them at ease. And, they said, oh, well, should we start then? And I'm like, well, no, let's just sit down, have a chat. Yeah. And then, I always send them a form beforehand. They can fill in some information for me. But, going through it, and they always add on some really important information I find, which they hadn't mentioned before. It's just such a luxury to be able to take an hour, minimum for intake and a treatment. And in the comfort of their own home, it just really puts them at ease. And I think that's just so lovely to be able to do. And it's something that I didn't have when I was in practice, when I was doing acupuncture then, it was like, okay, I asked for an hour for initial consultation and half an hour for the follow-ups. But, the assistants knocking on the door saying, oh,
Yep.
could I just have a question? Or, I'm sorry to bother you, but can I just do this? Or there's an emergency in the other room. Could you just come in and see it? Which, that's just part and parcel of regular practice. And that's how it is everywhere. But it's not always conducive to a really relaxing treatment and setting the owners at ease and setting the animals at ease. So I think that's such a luxury to be able to do that in people's houses. And it's really great. I really love it.
That's amazing. I resonate with so many of the things you said. And what's really interesting to me is from the beginning of your story of becoming a house call vet to becoming a house call vet and the experience of it, you're in the Netherlands, you're in a completely different part of the world, and it's still all so very much the same. Like,
Yes.
the burnout, the hours, it's crazy to me knowing that, this is not just an American problem. It's not just a problem.
Definitely not.
It's an issue that all of us vets, the culture is like, it's a global culture issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's so interesting to hear that, because you just don't know, like, what is the extent of this issue? Is this just American vets are suffering in our part of the world, and you guys off in the Netherlands are just having a great time? Who knows, But it's so very similar.
There are such universal issues. And I think I discovered that even before I studied the acupuncture and everything. Big parts of certain Facebook groups with vets, and most of them American based. And there were some international members, of course, including myself, but mostly American. But reading those stories, I think, it's just the same thing. It's just the same thing everywhere. It's the same issues that people run into, the same things with animal owners, and the stress of having to perform, having to sort out a solution, having to, especially owners on a budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, there were so many issues that they really are global, I have to say. Unfortunately so, really, because I think it's the same in the Netherlands, I think, as in the States, as in the UK, there's a shortage of vets. And obviously, in a way, I'm part of the problem, because I think, I left general practice to do my own thing. And of course, that's not helping, because especially also with the emergency medicine situation with people who need out of hours care, it's getting more and more difficult for them, because there are more central hospitals now taking the patients. And some people having to drive like an hour to get their pet seen to, which isn't an ideal situation, obviously. But I think something has to change, really. It's not a simple fix. I don't have the answers, but something has to change to encourage veterinarians to stay in the profession. Mm-hmm. I felt a little guilty about leaving, definitely, in the beginning, because I was like, well, I know how difficult it is to find replacements. And it was a great practice where I was at, and I had a great team, but it wasn't a good fit for me anymore. And I think, you've got to do what makes you happy. So, but it's so difficult. It's so difficult. I don't know what the solution is. There are so many issues at play, aren't there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. The question does come up from time to time. Am I part of the problem? We're kind of stepping right off the grid by doing our own house call practice, right?
Yeah.
We just take matters into our own hands. And the thing is, we're not stepping out of the profession completely. That's not wrong to do. And that might be the right thing for me someday, for you someday, for all of us. That's a whole different story. But we're stepping off the grid, but we're not actually stepping away from the profession, and we're still helping animals. And the alternative, I think, you can also see this as almost like one of those codependent relationships where it's like, if you enable the profession, right, by just becoming a martyr and making yourself into like a bloody pulp of whatever is left, like the profession won't change, because it can't, because it can keep taking advantage. Right.
No,
and you'll be a bloody pulp of whatever, and you'll be.
Then you're no help to anybody. Then you're no help to your colleagues. You're no help to your patients. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Maybe it takes folks like us stepping off the grid and saying, no more, we're not going to work under those conditions. Maybe that's what it will take for the profession to change, right? For people to make big steps. And but I do want to validate you, because it really is a question that comes up a lot. Like, am I part of the problem? Am I abandoning my colleagues?
Yeah. That's interesting, because I always think, that's just me thinking that.
No.
Yeah.
It's a really common thing. I had a lot of guilt myself. The great exodus is, I guess, what people are calling it, around COVID when things got crazy. Things get pretty crazy in the Netherlands.
Oh,
COVID.
absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
Things changed a lot, I think, then, because I remember when it all hit, and we were still going to work, obviously, with precautions. And for a while, it was great because it was really quiet, and we had a lot of time to, look after all the patients and everything. But I mean, when everything started to get back to normal again, things were crazy. Things were
Yeah.
crazy. People had bought more pets. It was a lot busier. Things changed a lot. Yeah, things changed definitely a lot. It was difficult. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and that's kind of around the time that I opened the house called Vet Academy, and I started seeing this sort of mass exodus of people really interested in the way we practice and wanting to get off the grid themselves. And I was like, all right, I'll help people do that, because I think for me, that's been the solution.
Yeah,
And, I think for us as a profession, I think for our clients and our patients, it's a wonderful solution. Like, we're
yeah.
providing, I hate to say it, but better, better,
Oh
something's
no, but
better about it.
yeah.
We'll put it that way. Something's
I
better about it.
I think there are definitely aspects of it better because I mean, as I said, I mean, people are so thrilled that I will come to their house to help their animals, and it's amazing to do, and I love it. It's just
Mhm.
great to be able to give them the time and the relaxation, if you like. But I mean, there was really an element of guilt when I left, but I
Yeah.
don't really feel that. I don't feel that anymore.
Good.
But But in the beginning, yeah, it was really like, oh, and you kind of feel like, oh yeah, I'm not proper vet anymore.
Yeah.
And that was something that I struggled with, I think, even before, because there was one point when I was in regular practice that I stopped doing surgery
Mhm.
because I really didn't enjoy it. It was really not my thing. And my employer noticed that. And she very kindly said to me, look, you're not enjoying this. How about you just take a step back, just stop doing that. And I think for you, it'll be better. And I was like, can't do that. I can't stop doing surgery. Then I'm not a proper vet. And I really had such difficulty with that
Mhm.
until we started implementing it. And then there would be like an emergency would come in. And I was like, normally I was like, oh God, I've got to do it. And actually I could just shift it off to somebody else. And it was lovely. And I just felt such a sense of relief that I didn't have to deal with it. And being a veterinarian, there were so many facets to it, and you don't have to
So
do
many.
everything that you don't want to do. It's all right to focus on the good bits that you're good at
Mhm.
and place your strengths. Because ultimately, that's what I'm doing, and I'm all the better for it. And I'm a much better vet and probably a better wife and mother, I was actually
Yeah.
say, because I'm doing something that I enjoy, and I get up in the mornings and I'm thinking, oh yeah, we've got this and this, and it's going to be great. And I'm not dreading, oh, what's going to come in today, or what kind of things am I going to have to do? And I think there was a real sense of, starting veterinary medicine and going into practice and thinking, okay, this is what's expected of me. This is what I have to do. Otherwise, I'm not a complete vet. And you think, well, I have to say, I have to be an employee for the rest of my life working at a clinic, or I'm expected to start a clinic with loads of staff and things like that. But, you don't have to. And there are so many other ways to be who you want to be in the veterinary profession, because you're still a vet and you're still doing really important work. And, when I see the results that I get from what I do, I mean, it's so gratifying. And I have a much deeper sense of satisfaction, I think, from my work now than I used to. And that's worth so much.
Brava. This is so, so important for our listeners to hear. I know there are people listening right now nodding their heads like, yes, thank you. I mean, I struggled with those very same feelings, especially around surgery. I'd done a surgical residency. So when I walked away from that, I very much had exactly what you mentioned. And at times I was like, oh, I'm not a real vet anymore. It's like, no, the actual way that it's gone is I've gone deeper in and I've become a better vet and a better person. And I love how you said your relationships with your family are probably better. And I mean, how could it not be? You're happier, you're going with your nature, the thing that you want to give, rather than always fighting a thing that you
Yeah.
feel this obligation to do or a way to be. And, how
Yeah.
could it not just have a net positive effect in your whole life and
Yeah.
the lives of the other people and animal that you're engaging with?
Yeah. I think, I
Makes
think
perfect
so.
sense.
Yeah, and it's so funny because my goal in the beginning was to sort of, well, I'll work and I'll maybe take one day off a week or something. Well, basically I work 5 days a week now, which wasn't exactly the plan, but there's a whole other issue, boundaries, which I know you also touch on quite a lot, and I'm still struggling with that. But it's
All
so
of us, lifelong struggle, all of us.
but it's so funny because my previous job, I worked fewer hours than I'm working now. But because I always make sure that I'm home to eat with my family in the evenings, and sometimes I will go and see a client in the evening if, we can't fix it any other way, and that's just how it is, and it's fine. But, I'm choosing to do that. I'm not sort of, expected to do that. But at one point, I did really feel like I was working quite a lot. And I asked my son, well, how do you think things are going? Because I know he didn't see me very much when I had my previous job, which also, mother guilt and all that kind of thing. It was really difficult. But he says, oh, no, you're home so much more now. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really seem like that because during the day, I'm just not home at all. But because I'm home at dinner times, I'm home almost always the time when, it's bedtime and everything like that. I'm around all those sort of times in the weekends and things like that. And, the way he experiences it is, oh, mum's around quite a lot more than she used to be. Whereas actually I'm not, but it's just, it's really the moments that I am there. That's quite funny. I'm really pleased about that because I was a little bit worried that I was going the other way a bit too much, that I was working a bit too much, which wasn't really exactly the plan, but it's been, it's been really, really busy. Unexpectedly so. It's really grown so much in like 2 years' time, which I didn't expect at all. But I was really happy to hear that he has a feeling that I'm around more. So that's really
fantastic.
good.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. That's like maybe arguably one of the best outcomes of the whole thing, right? To be there. And I mean, it sounds like when you're there, like you're able to be more present somehow. It sounds maybe that he's perceiving you more.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, I think the most important thing is, meal time. So we try to all sit down at the table together and be there. And, 3 nights a week, I wasn't. And that's worth so much. Yeah. So it's really good. It's been really positive change in every way, I would say.
So awesome. So now I'm really curious to dive into some of the differences with how things are in the Netherlands. I don't know any person, let alone any vet, let alone house call vet in the Netherlands at all. So I'm so curious to hear, and I know it might be difficult because this is your normal, but I think you'd mentioned that you've engaged with other vets in the US and UK and things. So you might have a sense of what the differences might be. Do you have any like interesting factoids or, what are some interesting things that you would mention that they don't call you doctor there. Talk to me about that too.
Oh, yes. Well, I would start off by saying I think that I'm not actually referred to as doctor here, which is probably quite surprising. But even though, I would obviously argue that real doctors treat more than one species. But no offense to all the doctors there. My best friend is a pediatrician, so I won't step on her toes. But yeah, not referred to as a doctor, so it's quite funny. It doesn't bother me really, to be honest. It's just kind of normal. Although some of my clients do call me doctor, which is really cute. But it's like, okay, I'm fine. And I think it is difficult to compare a little bit because I've only ever worked here, so I don't know exactly all the ins and outs. But I think in America, as far as I can gather, there's a bit more of a difference in general practice and working in an emergency hospital. And as I said, you get stuff flung at you sometimes in general practice here, which you just have to sort of deal with. And it's not like, oh, I'm not going to turf this over to an emergency clinic, which you might do in the States if you don't feel equipped for it. Sometimes we will if we don't have certain things available to us, such as ultrasounds or obviously CT scans and things like that. So I find that very difficult to deal with, I think, not knowing what's going to come in and having to deal with the emergency stuff because, as I said, I'm not into like emergency surgery. I'm not into like emergency stuff. I'm into like sitting down with people and explaining things to them and in a calm manner and giving the information they need. And everything like that. So I think that's quite a difference, which I think in a sense in America, I would have liked to go to general practice and just deal with that kind of thing, I think really. So definitely. That's a big difference.
Is it that everyone is just kind of walking in without appointments at all times?
No, we will have appointment system, but people will call in and say, look, my dog has been vomiting for 3 days straight. So I need to bring him in. And if we don't have an available slot, we'll just we'll just bring him in now and just deal with that. So things like that, really. And having admissions patients who have been admitted because they're really sick and having to deal with them in between appointments, that I find that very stressful as well. thinking, well, okay, so you basically have a fully booked day and you'll be there usually with hopefully another colleague, but sometimes you're there on your own if it's a smaller clinic, and thinking, okay, so I've got all my appointments and I also have an animal in the back that needs to be seen to, and having to do those things at the same time, and then feeling like they're not always getting the standard of care that you really would like for them. And feeling bad about doing your best because it's all you can do. But especially busier clinics that I've worked at, that's really been a challenge when you have that, because you're thinking, well, I'm just not doing the best I can. You're doing the best you can under the circumstances, but it doesn't always feel like that. And I find that very stressful.
Yeah, I understand that. There are 2 clinics that I've done relief work at here in Los Angeles that do that. And I have that same system. And I've always found it very it's stressful and anxiety inducing for me. I mean,
Yes.
I think on some level it's nice for the patients to be able, that need to be seen to just come in to their regular vet whenever. But at the same time, I think the amount of stress that it puts on us as providers to be able to have some semblance of predictability to our day and, like you said, provide the best that we know we can give. I've always felt, very similarly
yeah.
this is too much.
Exactly. And I've had colleagues who have really thrived on that and actually didn't mind it and enjoyed the chaos and the unpredictability. And that's fine. And I've definitely worked with people like that, and they've got this on the go and that on the go, and it's all going well. And then I never really had that. But I think maybe that's a personal thing.
Yeah.
And we're not all into emergencies and that kind of stuff. And
No,
that's
we're not.
okay. And that's okay. And that's something I've only really learned in the past few years, I think, really. Thinking that you have to be everything to everybody, otherwise you're not fulfilling the brief. And it doesn't have to be like that. And for some people, that's fine and that's how it is. But for other people, it's not, and that's okay too.
Brava. Yeah, thank you for saying that. That's really important for our listeners to hear that message. And I think we can't say it enough.
Yeah, and I wish somebody had said that to me a long time ago. That it's just expectations that put on you, I think. And it can really make things very difficult for you, make life hard when it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. And here you are paying it forward to folks who need to hear that. So good.
I hope one person who hears this will find it useful. Let's put it like that.
They will.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will.
I hope so.
So I'm not super knowledgeable about the healthcare system in the Netherlands, but I have heard that you guys have universal healthcare. And I'd be curious to hear a little bit more about that and, kind of how that looks where you are.
Well, I would say that the human version and the veterinary version are different. So with the humans, we have insurance. So they changed the system a while ago, but basically in the system now is that you have your compulsory insurance that you have to take out, which you pay on a monthly basis. All your GP visits, so just see a general practitioner, are completely free. So they're covered by that. And so you can choose different kind of packages for your insurance, but usually up until a certain amount of money, everything is paid for. So that includes any kind of hospital visits, any kind of hospital treatment, things like that. And depending on your package, lots of things are completely covered by the amount that you pay per month, which is fantastic. Sometimes if you go over that, then you'll have to pay X amount of money. But unless you have a really bad year, then that's normally not the case. So, I mean, I've had family members who have had cancer treatments and things like that, or operations, and they don't have to pay anything. So it's all covered by your insurance, which is wonderful. And dare I say it, where it should be the case everywhere in the world. That's another political discussion. Well, I think with animals, I wish more people had insurance because I think that would make things a lot easier, obviously. And I think also that's a universal issue. People buying animals, then underestimating the costs of healthcare, and then something happening like your cat gets run over and needs an operation on its leg, or your Labrador has eaten something it shouldn't have and has to have an operation. And it costs a lot of money inevitably. And I think people are not very well prepared for the costs. And that can cause some problems with payment. I wouldn't really like to put a number on the percentage of how many people are insured for their animals here. I know that in places like Scandinavia, and I think the UK is a bit higher. But I also think it's a bit difficult now because insurance companies are excluding more and more things now for animals, which I don't know how it is in America, but I know that that's definitely the case here. So, I mean, if you've got a dog which is prone to a lot of certain health issues, bulldogs, skin issues, breathing issues, a lot of things just won't be covered anymore. And I think that's making it less attractive for people to take out insurance for their animals. Whereas, I think, I do always say to people, if you've got a few €1,000 lying about that you can use for your pet if something happens, then okay, fine. But not everybody has that, obviously. In that case, insurance is a good thing to take out. But I do hear a lot of complaints of people saying, well, I have this dog, but he's not insured for this. He's not insured for his elbows, for his knees, because it's a breed that's well known to have problems with that. And I think that's causing some problems.
So that's very interesting. So the way that health insurance covers humans where you are is very different from how health insurance is covering animals when people elect to take out insurance.
Yes. And I think that's probably a problem because everybody here has health insurance. You don't think about it. You pay a certain amount of money every month and you hardly ever have to pay anything yourself. So it's all really easy. And then you get hit by a vet bill, which you didn't expect. And there's a really big discrepancy there. And people are like, oh my God, veterinary medicine is so expensive. And I think, well, compared to human medicine, it's not that expensive, but you just don't see the bills.
Right. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah.
So, that's difficult to explain to people sometimes because they think, oh my God, it's so expensive. And actually, well, medicine is always expensive everywhere, but you just don't see the bills really here. And I think that makes the difference.
Yeah. I mean, here in the US, we have that same conversation as well. And I think, now that everyone's got insurance here, required to have insurance here. Actually, I'm not sure if that's just a California. No, that's a federal thing. Everyone here is required to have insurance. But it sounds like the way that plays out where you are is so different from how it plays out for the animals where you are. And has it been that way for you guys for a long time, that insurance has been?
Yes, definitely. I mean, the healthcare system when I first moved to Netherlands was slightly different, but it essentially boiled down to more or less the same thing. Yeah. So, I mean, very rarely you really have to pay for any kind of healthcare for yourself, obviously, apart from the monthly payments that you do. Yeah. So that is a very big difference. Definitely. Yeah. And it's a shock to the system for a lot of pet owners, I think, when they have to pay. And I imagine it's more or less the same in the UK when you have a national health service there, where also you don't have to pay anything at all, and everything is free unless you choose private healthcare. And I think the difference there is even bigger, I would imagine. Again, I haven't practiced there, but it's definitely something that I've heard from colleagues in the UK. Yeah, it's difficult to wrap people's heads around that so they understand it. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I feel we could probably have an entire episode just talking about, the differences in the healthcare systems and insurance and all of that stuff. So very interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
And so you mentioned that you drive around in your little red car. You mentioned that to me before we started recording. I want to hear about your little red car. Tell me about it.
So the good thing is when you're just doing acupuncture and vaccinations and things, you don't need very much stuff. So I have a very small car. So I have a Daihatsu Sirium, which is a tiny car. In the Netherlands, they refer to cars like mine as a cookie tin. So, so basically just refer to a very small car. So, but I mean, it does the job. I'm not into fancy cars. I just need something to get me from A to B that I can park easily, that doesn't use too much fuel. That's a big advantage, not having to take a whole battery of medication with me and things like that. I have a couple of bags that I take with me for the really big jobs when I've got a day with, I've got acupuncture, I've got titer checks, I've got vaccinations, I've got, basic health checks. Then I will have my big doctor's bag with all my stuff in it. So my acupuncture needles on one side and my vaccine vials on the other side. If I'm just doing acupuncture all day, I've got a really gorgeous little vintage doctor's bag, which belonged to my mother-in-law because she was a district nurse. So she did something a little bit similar to me. So traveling around people's houses, seeing sick people, in this case, sort of animals. And she had a really gorgeous, little leather bag. And she gave it to me years ago. And she's like, oh, maybe you can use it. And I was like, well, it's gorgeous. And it was just a beautiful thing. And I thought, well, I'm not really going to use it. Until I started doing acupuncture at people's houses. And it's just perfectly big enough to put my needles in and my little treats in for the animals and all that kind of stuff. And so I prefer to take that with me than my big doctor's bag if I can. So it's always next to me, just on my little passenger seat. So when I go everywhere, that's all I need. So that's really good.
And so you mentioned titer checks. In the US, that is a lot more common in the holistic and integrative space.
Sure.
It's still sort of gaining more and more, I guess, not popularity, but like it's more commonly being done in general. And when you do vaccine titer tests, do you grab a sample and then send it off to a lab? Do you do a test in the home? How do you kind of manage your blood work and sampling and things like that?
Yeah, sure. Spider check is definitely growing in popularity here as well, I would say, and also among just regular clinics. And it's just a great addition also with the acupuncture because, you're just finding out now more and more that animals don't need vaccinations as often as they need to. Or I thought that was thought to be the case.
Right.
And the best thing is that we have in-house tests that we can use. So we don't have to send the bloods off. So I will just go to somebody's house, check the animal, then take a just really minuscule amount of blood. We really need very little. And then we have test kits that I just take with me, and then you can do it in people's houses. And until recently, we had one where you put it in and 10 minutes later, you got the results, which was amazing and perfect. But it hasn't been available for a while. So I'll be using another one, which is also more than suitable. It takes about 20-25 minutes to get the results. Actually, people think, it's taking so much longer than it used to. But I mean, it doesn't really matter because I'll just be sitting down with the owners, having a chat, having a cup of tea. So, I mean, it basically takes as long as it normally does anyway. And then at the end of it, you have the results and it's just perfect, and then you don't have to go back again another day to give them the vaccinations or fill in their passports and everything. You have the results straight away, which is fantastic. So I'm really, really happy with those tests. Yeah. And it is gaining popularity, I have to say, a little bit more and more. There were some clinics which still won't really accept it. But I mean, it has been really proven that they work. I mean, if you compare the results to ones that you send off to a lab, then they will completely be the same. So I know that it's a fantastic way to give the animals the vaccinations they need and not the ones maybe that they don't need. And sometimes you see pets who have had their large cocktail of parvo, hepatitis, distemper, and they will have had it 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and they're still protected from that vaccine. And it's amazing. So I think, why give them something they don't need?
Totally agree. I love that. I haven't done the patient side or whatever you call it, bedside testing. But I have submitted off to the lab. Most people don't really elect to do the titer testing. I wish more people would. It might be that having, a test that I can run in home might be better.
Yeah, it's very convenient, I have to say. Yeah, absolutely. Because you can just get it all done and dusted in one appointment and it's perfect. And what I also do now is not just me, there are other colleagues of mine who do the same, but hold titer sessions. So basically you go to a village hall and then you get a load of owners in with their dogs, and then you just get them in, check them over, take the blood, run the tests, then you've got your results. And it's a great way to boost popularity of those tests and really raise awareness of the possibilities and everything. And then people don't have to pay as much as they would if they went to a clinic or if I came to see them in their home. So they're really popular as well. So I've got a couple of those. I've got a couple of those coming up soon. So that's really fun. It's really fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's so amazing because the last one I did, I think we had 15 or 16 dogs, and only one of them had to have the vaccination that all of them would have ordinarily have gotten. So that was a brilliant result. Yeah, it was
brilliant.
So cool.
Brilliant. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, it's amazing. Like some of these vaccines really last forever.
I know.
It's very interesting. It's very, very cool.
It is really interesting. And there's a really big differences in between the individuals, and you would think, some of them really do need them and others just absolutely don't. So it's a great way to test that.
Yeah. Really, really cool. I've been participating in a COVID vaccine study here through a hospital that's doing trials on various things. And they're just routinely checking my antibody levels. I sort of looked this up. I can't remember which antibody they're looking at, but I've been tracking how long my antibodies from illness last and how long the antibodies from the vaccine have lasted. And it's like, I have so many antibodies, and they're lasting forever. It's amazing. Just watch, I'll get COVID next week, but it's been very, very interesting kind of looking at
that's so interesting.
It's very, very interesting, just kind of observing in my own body what's happening with those antibodies.
Yeah.
Very
And I mean,
interesting.
what was the case for you might not necessarily be the case for somebody else. You don't know. It's depending on so many different factors. But that's amazing.
Yeah, it's really been interesting. And like you can see how that kind of thing would be so individual. It's very, very,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can I ask, when you do blood work for animals and you get your blood samples, do you bring an assistant with you or a vet tech, or are you doing that solo?
I actually don't. I do it solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't.
Badass.
Not really. Well, I do always sort of, stress that the animals do sometimes have to be quite well behaved in order for it to work. I have to say I haven't really had any problems yet. Owners are usually quite good at restraining the animals. So that's quite good. I have on occasions done titer tests on cats as well.
Okay.
And it is mixed, I have to say, because it has to be a very well behaved cat. And I don't do an awful lot of blood taking anymore from cats. So, I mean, they have to be very well behaved. So that can be a challenge. I have done it in the past with some cats who have been really very good, and it's been absolutely fine with the owners. But no, I do everything myself, just using basically the owners as my assistants. I just kind of explain to them what to do. And I have to say, most of the time it's fine. And especially with titer tests, you only need a few drops of blood, so that's okay. I have a couple of times also taken blood samples from animals for a wellness check to be taken off to a lab, but they've all been very good, very well behaved. So it's all gone very well. But yeah, so no, I work completely solo. Yeah, I do get sometimes asked if I'm going to take on any staff, and the answer is no. I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy doing everything on my own, really.
Yeah.
No, I don't. It's just more admin that I don't need, really. So no.
I relate very much to that. I do have a vet tech that works with me, kind of on the back end and also periodically in the home. But I always said, I'm very much of the same mind. I've always said I never wanted to be managed, and I never wanted to manage anyone else.
Yeah.
It's just it's a whole other layer of things. And so brava, and congrats that you're doing everything solo. I think that's a beautiful way to practice.
Yeah, and I would be a terrible boss. I think that's really one of the main things. I just would not be a very good assistant at all. So I'm quite happy doing what I do.
Yeah, it's good to know oneself and what we thrive at and what would be more challenging. So thank you for sharing all of that. And before I close up, I wanted to ask, is there anything else that you'd like to share with folks? Anything about yourself? Any advice you'd like to give?
Well, I think we've covered most of the things. I would really just say to people, don't feel limited by what you're doing now. And if you're a vet, there are so many possibilities to you out there. And you don't have to stay in practice the rest of your life if you're not enjoying it, because there are so many other ways to help animals. And I don't think you're letting anybody down, or yourself down, or your patients down if you choose to do something else and choose to do something you love, because life is short. And, we're working for a long time, let's face it, and it's getting longer and longer. So, I mean, use that time to do something you enjoy and that you love. And that's just so important in life. That's would really be my message.
Fantastic message. Thank you so much for that. I know that's going to resonate for so many people. And in summary, since we are in the house called Vet Cafe, can I ask, what is your favorite beverage to drink?
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would assume that I'm English, that it would be tea, and they would be absolutely correct. So Yorkshire tea, preferably. I don't take milk in my tea usually, which is not very British of me, but I have a Polish mother. So I was brought up with the Polish side there of not having milk in my tea. But seeing as we're in the house called Vet Cafe, which is a little bit fancy, I would order a London fog, which is something I discovered a couple of years ago, which is really nice. It's like Earl Grey tea with a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of lavender, and some warm milk. It's been a revelation. So I'm having one of those.
The best. Cheers to that. Cheers to the London fog.
Cheers.
Love it. All right, my dear. Thank you so much for your time today. So excited to have a little connection to the Netherlands and to London and London fog. Can't wait to keep the conversation going with you offline. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the House Call Vet Cafe. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe or follow button on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts so you never have to miss an episode. This podcast is made specifically for you, so don't be shy if you'd like to reach out and let me know your thoughts on this episode. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as The House Call Vet Academy, where I also share more valuable content. If you're interested in learning more about consulting for House Call Vets or the House Call Vet Academy online course and community, please click on the link in the show notes. Have an amazing rest of your day, and I can't wait for you to join us for our next episode of the House Call Vet Cafe.
If you're looking for help with ultrasound scanning, check out First Opinion Veterinary Ultrasound for independent machine reviews and online and in-person teaching options. FOVU, simplifying ultrasound.